welcome. Today we're going to be learning how to make an authentic 17th century boiled pudding such that the characters in my novel, Iron and Fire, would eat with their supper, maybe on Sunday after church. So you start off with a square of muslin, something free of dyes, free of chemicals, and you boil it in a massive pot of water. I mean, as big a pot as you possibly have. I mixed in a half a cup of milk. Milk is something that would have been readily available to colonists in 17th century New England. Most people had a cow or had access to a dairy. And then you would add 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. The majority of colonists also kept chickens, so eggs would have been very readily available. Mix them together with my whisk, which, as you can see, is a very 21st century whisk made of silicone. If I wanted to be authentic, I would have gotten a bundle of sticks together, but come on now. Next to the dry ingredients, I used a cup of bleached white flour. In the 17th century, colonists would have used a much coarser type of flour or possibly even cornmeal if that's what was available. And add a tablespoon of sugar. A little bit of salt in there for flavor. And then I added a teaspoon each of nutmeg, mace, and ground ginger. Nutmeg was a very plentiful spice in 17th century New England. It was available in every home, it was cheap, it was easy to store, and it's found in lots of recipes. So I mixed that in with my flour, and then I added in 1 stick of cold cubed butter. Again, dairies were fairly regular things in the 17th century, and so most people would have had easy access to butter. You mix the butter until it makes a kind of coarse meal. I mixed it in with my fingers, some good stress release, and then I mixed in my wet ingredients, remember my milk and my eggs. So once that all came together, the recipe calls for dried fruit, dried plums, dried currants. I don't have any of those, and as this is New England, I figure let's add some good old-fashioned dried cranberries. So that's what we did. I added maybe a cup or so of dried cranberries to the batter and mixed that in. Meanwhile, the muslin was boiling in my massive pot of water on my 21st century gas stove. I took the muslin out with a pair of tongs. Be very careful, it is extremely hot. And I transferred the muslin over to a glass bowl where I spread it on top and made a little receptacle for my dough. This is a material that would have been readily available and people would have been able to use it in their cooking. Added a little bit of flour to prevent sticking. So flour on my hands, flour on the cloth, and flour on the dough. The dough at this point, it looks a bit like chocolate chip cookie dough. However, it is much, much stickier. So another reason to add that flour so it doesn't stick to the material. I wrapped it up in a cute little packet. This was a common way for people to cook in 17th century New England because the average person only did their baking once or twice a week. It was entirely too much work to do on a daily basis. However, there was always a pot of boiling water over the hearth. So it was relatively simple to be able to drop your packet of pudding into your hot water and let that simmer while you go about your day. So I dropped it into the pot of rolling, bubbling, boiling water. Checked on it occasionally to see what was going on, tried to discern exactly when it was done. And I cooked it for about 2.5 hours. You can let it go as long as 3. I prepared an ice bath to cool it down. Obviously, they wouldn't have an ice readily available in the 17th century. And so any kind of cold water will do just to kind of stop the cooking process or at least slow down the cooking process. Transferred my little muslin bag onto a plate, and it was time for the big reveal. And it looks kind of gross. My best friend is a forensic pathologist, and when I sent her a picture, she agreed that this definitely looks like some sort of an organ that was removed from a previously alive human. However, nothing makes unappetizing food look better than alcohol. So I mixed rum, which is something that was plentiful in 17th century New England. The rum trade was in full swing by then. So I mixed my rum with a little less than 1/4 cup of sugar and sort of eyeball it. Then I added about 3 tablespoons of butter and brought that all to a boil until some of the alcohol burned off and it started to thicken. I poured my glaze over the pudding, and I can tell you it smelled amazing. It doesn't look particularly appetizing, but the smell was memorable. It was delicious. When I sliced it open, those cranberries certainly make it look beautiful, don't they? It was a bit gelatinous, not something I'm used to eating, but I have to say the taste was pleasantly surprising. It had notes of nutmeg and sugar and cranberry, and it all came together in a fairly pleasant dessert. So again, this is something that would have been eaten by Verity Parker and her family in 1675 in the novel Iron and Fire. Iron and Fire will be released on April 5th, 2022, and it is currently available for pre-order on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. If you go to my website, KerrinWillis.com, you can sign up for updates. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.